if you bothered to report what John Ashworth is doing on the health service, if you bothered to report what Angela Rayner is doing and saying on schools, if you bother to report what the Labour Party is actually saying, it's your responsibility to make sure that the opposition voice is heard as well as the government's voice. It's your failings. Is out there at the levels of inequality and injustice within our society. We'll expose all of that. That's where our case is very, very strong.
Could you answer yes or no, please?
Listen, you've asked me the question many, many times. How many times do I have to tell you? We're taking our case out there to win because we believe we can win.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Corbyn, this feels like you're running away from the media. Can't you stop and
Why don't we just talk?
Jeremy,
I want to arrange an interview. Speak to my press office. Thank you. Jeremy, please don't.
And we said no. So now we're asking them.
Why did you call Hamas and Hezbollah your friends?
What I did was spoke at a meeting in which I said I wanted all people involved in the Middle East issue to come together and be able to have a discussion, to be able to discuss. Can you allow me to finish? Do you mind?
Yeah, but I asked you a question and you're ignoring it.
No, I'm not ignoring the question. If you'd give me a minute, I'll answer it. The point is this. Listen for a minute, if you don't mind. I spoke at a meeting about the Middle East crisis in Parliament. And there were people there from Hezbollah, and I said I welcomed our friends from Hezbollah to have a discussion and a debate. And I said I wanted Hamas to be part of that debate. I have met Hamas in Lebanon, and I've met Hezbollah in this country in Lebanon. I've also met...
Are they your friends or not?
Can I finish?
Are they your friends or not?
Can I finish? I've also met...
Well, you can't if it's a long answer.
Look, the issue is this. You are not prepared to discuss the whole issue of the Middle East. You're not prepared to discuss the wider question. There is not going to be any peace process unless there is talks involving Israel, Hezbollah and Hamas. And I think everybody knows that.
But as you know, the controversy is around you calling them friends. And you've explained, I think, that when you said that, you didn't mean that they're friends.
I used it in a collective way at a discussion, and you're trying to trivialise the whole issue of the Middle East. You're trying to trivialise the whole discussion about how you bring about a long-term peace process.
I'm very happy.
And you know that.
No, I'm very happy. This quote about friends has surfaced, and that's what I was asking you about, and you've had your opportunity to...
Well, thanks for the tabloid journalism.
To answer. That's not tabloid journalism.
Yes,
That's putting your own words back to you.
Tabloid journalism where you're evading. You are evading asking me to give an opportunity to discuss the wider issue of the Middle East. Because all you're interested
actually, what I was going to ask you next was something rather more important.
No, it's tabloid journalism, and you know it.
Well, no, can we move on, please? It's discussing the NHS today. We're discussing the NHS. Can you have an NHS question, please? Can we have an NHS question?
We live in a free country.
I know. I'm very well aware we live in a free country, and I'm very proud to live in a free country, as are you.
I want to ask, not what you want me to ask.
Well, we've called a press conference on the NHS, and I really hoped that you'd be able to find a question on the NHS. But if you can't, we'll take another one.
Okay, good stuff. Just because I think lots of people watching what's happened in the last 24 hours are not able to kind of tee it all together, to kind of square the circle in a sense, that you are on the train and the CCTV images show you walking by empty reserved and unreserved seats. So what, at 11:10, that was before you made that film saying the train was full. Why did you not sit in one of those seats?
Because they were reserved seats.
No, there were CCTV.
I'm glad you've watched the CCTV so carefully. It's a really important issue, this. Absolutely crucial. It's the future of the whole nation and the NHS. But let's get to the details of it. Yes, I did walk through the train. Yes, I did look for 2 empty seats together so I could sit down with my wife to talk to her. That wasn't possible. And so I went to the end of the train. The train manager, who was a very nice gentleman, came along and we had a chat about the problems of overcrowding and regulations on the train, and he said he would see what he could do, because after he'd already offered me an upgrade to first class, which I'd declined, he then very kindly did find some seats, and after 42 minutes I went back through the train to the seats that he'd allocated. We sat down there and we then conducted a lot of preparatory work for our visit to Newcastle. In the last few days, the Sun, the Mail, the Telegraph, the Express have all gone a little bit James Bond. They've found a former Czechoslovakian spy whose claims are increasingly wild and entirely false. He seems to believe I kept him informed about what Margaret Thatcher had for breakfast, and says he was responsible for either Live Aid or the Mandela concert, or maybe both. It's easy to laugh. But something more serious is happening. Publishing these ridiculous smears that have been refuted by Czech officials shows just how worried the media bosses are by the prospect of a Labour government. They're right to be. Labour will stand up to the powerful and corrupt and take the side of the many, not the few. A free press is essential for democracy, and we don't want to close it down, we want to open it up. At the moment, much of our press isn't very free at all. In fact, it's controlled by billionaire tax exiles who are determined to dodge paying their fair share for our vital public services. The general election showed the media barons are losing their influence, and social media means their bad old habits are becoming less and less relevant. But instead of learning these lessons, they're continuing to resort to lies and smears. Their readers, you, all of us, deserve so much better. Well, we've got news for them. Change is coming.
Peter Lazenby, Morning Star newspaper. Can anything be done about the shockingly biased media?
Peter, thanks very much for your question. You've noticed that some of the media are slightly biased against the Labour Party. This is sometimes said to be the case. Listen, we're very serious about ensuring there is freedom of information and a right to know in society. It was, after all, Labour who introduced the Freedom of Information Act. We also recognise that in many societies around the world, very brave journalists lose their lives or are assassinated because they've uncovered the truth about brutal regimes and abuses of human rights. Journalists and journalism and free press are intrinsic to a democracy and a free society. I fully understand that. But it's also important to ensure there is responsible journalism, that there is a multiplicity of ownership, that there is a right of reply, and there isn't an abuse of monopoly power within it. And so we would develop Leveson, and Tom Watson is very clear on this, that we will protect the diversity of our free press, and we will ensure there is diversity of all of our media outlets in this country, so that everybody can take an informed opinion.